So, my colossal fuck up. It's really actually quite simple. I just happened to choose the world's largest stage upon which to share it. It happened almost 30 years ago in Seoul, South Korea, at the 24th Olympiad. I was a member of the Canadian National Men's Aid in rowing, and we were one of 11 nations vying for an Olympic gold medal that year. The Canadian men had actually won the event 4 years earlier at the 1984 Games in Los Angeles, which made us defending Olympic champions. Therefore, the Canadian press in particular had some pretty lofty expectations of us, as did we. And in the early afternoon of September 25th, 1988, we set out to defeat the best in the world. Less than 6 minutes after the starter's command, we crossed the line in 6th and last position, or DFL as we used to call it. As if we needed reminding, the Globe and Mail cropped this photograph and put it on the front page of the national sports section from coast to coast the very next day. And then they included this headline. Okay, maybe you didn't say exactly that, but it's what I read when I got home. In the days and weeks following, I desperately tried to come to terms with an outcome that I was ill-prepared for. I cannot begin to describe the overwhelming sense of shame that I felt as a result of losing in our Olympic final. My first strategy was to disappear. I figured Australia, good a place as any, beautiful beaches, beautiful women, hot sunshine, right? But just like the expression, wherever you go, there you are. Sure, I was in paradise all right, but I was drowning. Those relentless voices that I had hoped to leave behind had come with me, and they had brought some friends. After months of painful denial, I finally decided to do what any guy does when things get really messy. I was going to fix this all by myself. Logically, my new plan was to go to the very next Olympic Games in Barcelona in 1992, and I was going to win. I figured that would undo the shame that had now consumed me. And so, utilizing revenge, retribution, and a truckload of hatred, I began my comeback. That's no exaggeration, believe me. Surprisingly, that method of motivation worked like a charm for about 6 months. Until one morning when getting hit by a car seemed like a reasonable excuse to miss a day of training, I knew that I had come to the end of my Olympic journey. I retired from rowing in 1990. And what followed was what we now refer to as athlete transition. At the time, we didn't even have a name for it. God forbid we ever talked about our struggles. Mine were textbook. A loss of identity, lack of purpose, disengagement, rage, disillusionment, anxiety and depression, an eating disorder, obsessive-compulsive behavior, addiction, and suicidal thoughts. Awesome. My experience had me ticking all of these boxes except 2. It's interesting in the research around athlete transition, people are shocked when they find out about this. But keep in mind, when you're a young athlete and all you've ever known is your sport, and when what you do is who you are, and then what you do is taken away, it presents itself as a pretty big obstacle. There's one photo that captures where, how, and why things went sideways. The first time I saw this picture, I thought it was the best rowing photograph I'd ever seen, right? For me, it epitomized the rower. Mean and tough and ready to go to war and kill if that's what winning required. Now I look at this picture, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I mean, hands down. But part of that is because I know the context of this photograph. You see, in the moment before this picture was snapped, the photographer raised his camera, looked at us through his viewfinder, and he said, "Okay, boys, now give me your best game face." And isn't it so telling that we all chose to look like that? There's one word that captures the essence of that photograph: ego. And anytime you have ego involved, you have a chase on your hands. And in my case, I wasn't just chasing an Olympic gold medal. I was chasing what I thought it would bring me: self-worth. Although, as most of you in here perhaps might already know, anytime we hand ego over to the steering wheel, invariably we find ourselves careening off a cliff in short order. I was no different. Perhaps not surprisingly, it was a woman who picked me up and set me straight. Her name is Robin Marr, and she was a member of the Canadian National Middle Distance running team for 17 years. Robin showed me what strength was, but perhaps more importantly, she challenged me on my definition of it, because my definition involved male bravado, surface toughness, swagger, machismo. What a broken story that was. Instead, Robin showed me where strength, real inner strength, lives. Deep inside of us, where compassion, empathy, and love reside. You see, Robin competed for a different reason. Because she loved running. Because she loved racing. In fact, believe it or not, this photograph is from a race. It's the final of the women's 3,000 meters from the Commonwealth Games that Victoria hosted here in 1994. I was at that race. To date, it's the most powerfully inspiring performance that I have ever seen. I watched Robin go from the opening laps of being tied for last to finishing second behind Angela Chalmers and winning Canada a Commonwealth Games silver medal. That woman, that race, changed everything for me. Yes, don't worry. Eventually, I finally realized that losing an Olympic gold medal, in the grand scheme of things, it's a first world problem. Get over yourself, buddy. Second one, I realized that what began as a devastating moment had eventually transformed itself into a gift. And from that gift, I learned that life doesn't have a finish line. At no point do we ever arrive. That instead, life is about traveling. Yes, Jason, it is the proverbial journey. The crazy part about that change in perspective, that transformation, is that now the things that I've done, the things that I've accomplished, have been tenfold since I stopped chasing. Paradox? I get it. But truth be told, my real screw up, it wasn't losing in that Olympic final. Not at all. It's what I made losing mean, and the fact that I took 15 years to come to terms with that meaning. 15 years. Time that I will never get back. But if you think I'm alone, think again. Because my guess, there's more than a few of us in here this evening who now have their own Olympic gold medal that they are currently chasing. Maybe it's a new title, more money, a fancy car, a new house, chasing something that we are convinced will make our life better once we've won it. Let me tell you straight up, life does not work that way. Never has, never will. But the tragic irony of this story is that the Germans won that event. They won our race. They won a gold medal that looks exactly like that. In the years following his retirement, the stroke of the German crew killed himself. That one hit close. He starved himself to death. If we are not a whole person before the chase begins, regardless of whether or not we get what we're chasing, we will never be whole at the end. Life doesn't play like that. Everything that we need to feel the happiness, the joy, the love, the self-worth, the whatever it is that you have linked to what you are so desperately chasing is already inside of you. You just have to wake up and feel it. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.